Who is the most useless character of each One Piece arc? Starting with Romance Dawn. The most useless character here is Koby. Guys, no, I'm just kidding. Koby had his character moments like when he called Alvida the ugliest hag, plus he is the one who name dropped Zoro, so there's no way he was the most useless of this arc. Which means the most useless character, and by that I mean the most useless relevant character here, is Captain Morgan's son, Helmeppo. He has zero combat skills and has nothing going for him except being a spoiled brat. I mean, his big feat this arc is literally just stomping on the food meant for Zoro. Moving on, we have Orange Town, and our guy is the mayor, Buro. His big moment is walking up to Buggy and almost getting choked to death. Luffy saves him and just decides to knock him out to keep him safe because he was ranting about how he doesn't need outside help even though he was no match for Buggy. The third arc is Syrup Village, and this one goes to Kaya's butler, Mary. His big moment is confronting Captain Kuro but getting fatally slashed and then presumed dead by us, the audience, until he's revealed to be somehow completely fine and back at his job as the butler. The first case of the fake out death in One Piece. Moving on to the next arc, of course we got Baratie, and here it's the Marine Lieutenant Full Body. Sanji makes him look like an idiot in front of his woman, and when he tries crashing out a little, Sanji destroys him and holds him dangling by his neck, which was an expected reaction to Full Body trashing Baratie's food. And prior to this incident, Full Body had also tried sinking the Going Merry, which didn't go well either, as you know. Ultimately, Full Body exits the chat after his ego experiences what can only be described as the Great Humbling. Next up, we have Arlong Park, and this one is extremely obvious. It's Marine Captain Nezumi. He was getting money from Arlong to make sure that the Marines stay out of Arlong's business, which means he wasn't doing his actual job as Marine. I mean, a true world government patriot would never let a fisherman do his thing, right? Jokes aside, when Arlong tips him off, he raids the scene and takes Nami's 100 million berry. And when Arlong is defeated, he appears right back again, this time to take Arlong's money. But obviously, Nami beats his ass and he runs away. Now, although he is useless in the context of the arc, he is very useful during the transition to the next arc because he is the reason Luffy gets his first bounty. Alright, now it's time for Loguetown, and honestly the only answer here is Alvida. She returns to the plot as an ally of the Buggy Pirates in order to get revenge on Luffy, but Luffy could not care less. Next up, right before the Grand Line, we have Reverse Mountain, but wait, was there any useless characters in this arc? All we remember are the cool ass moments with Crocus and Laboon. Actually, yes, there's Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday, and out of these two, the most useless one is definitely Mr. Nine. Their goal was to kill Laboon, but they ended up getting owned hard. So hard, in fact, that Mr. Nine ends up begging the Straw Hats for a ride to Whiskey Peak. Speaking of Whiskey Peak, it's our next arc, and our character here is Miss Valentine. Her Kilo Kilo fruit sounded deadly considering how she could just fall on you with thousands of kilos worth of weight, but instead, she misses Luffy and Zoro and gets easily knocked out while Luffy and Zoro are busy fighting each other. And honestly, Mr. 5 doesn't do any better than her, but I'd still put her as the most useless because she literally just falls and misses. As for Mr. 5, he is actually the most useless of the next arc, Little Garden. Sure, he's the one who put the bomb on Dory's beer, but ultimately, he is useless. He couldn't even defeat Usopp and Karoo. He got tricked into eating Usopp's Tabasco Star and was then defeated by Zoro. Next up is Drum Kingdom, and this is the first arc where we have two characters who are equally useless to a T. We're talking about Chess and Kuro Marimo. They fuse and become Chess Marimo thanks to Wapple's powers, but Chopper fights and defeats them. Moving on, we have Alabasta, and things are really going to pick up from here. I'm going to give this to the Rebel Army leader, Koza. He is the leader of the rebels. He gets a lot of build-up plus emotional ties to Vivi, but he spends the entire arc being wrong. And he even gets manipulated by Bon Clay's disguise, while Vivi is the one who actually solves everything. The 12th arc is Jaya, and the useless character we have here is Sarquise from the Bellamy Pirates. He is literally what you call all bark, zero bite. He spends the entire arc being an ass about everything, like accusing Roshio of cheating at poker, throwing money at Luffy, or telling Nami to leave the Straw Hats and join them instead. And while even after Luffy one-shots Bellamy and it's revealed that Luffy's true bounty is 100 million, he still doesn't come out of his own delusions. When he bumps into Blackbeard, he tries to act tough, but obviously Blackbeard wasn't having none of that, so he simply slams his head into the ground. At number 13 is Skypiea, and this is tricky because we're still at arcs where pretty much every major character is useful. From the Straw Hats to the side characters like Gonfall, Viper, Conus, everyone gets their relevance. Still, if I were to give this one to someone, it'd be Conus's father, Pagaya. He was useful in the sense that he welcomes the Straw Hats, tells them about the dials, and even lets them use the waiver, but in the overall context of the arc, he gets to do nothing. His big moment was when he sacrificed himself to protect Conus from a lightning strike by Enel, but again, since he survived, you just know Conus would have survived it as well. Moving on to the 14th arc, we got Long Ring Long Island. And here it's Porsche, the beauty of the Fox Pirates, and her entire character is just about being annoying, flashy, and incompetent. She plays the role of the announcer while cheering for her own crew, and that's literally all she does. Although I guess in the anime she does participate in the donut race. Moving on, we got the Water 7 arc, and this is where it gets serious. What do you think? Who is the primary useless character of this arc? For me, I'm giving it to Zanbai from the Franky family. Aside from Franky, he was like the face of the family, and I mean, when the family attacked Zoro on the Going Merry, he was the one leading the attack. Of course, Zoro easily beat him and then went right back to sleep. And although after the family steals the 200 million berries, he gets to laugh at Usopp, which leads into how the entire family immediately gets destroyed by Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper. And after all of this, Zanbai also gets destroyed by Lucci. Now what about Enies Lobby? And although when you think of useless characters of Enies Lobby, Spandam appears in your head, let me point out that he is actually the opposite of useless. His actions, which include the exposition dump on the Straw Hats, harassing Robin, and literally calling the Buster Call, are what drive the plot of the arc. So even if he's personally pathetic, he is useful, so if not him, who else? I'll go with Captain T-Bone. He was the Marine leading the forces who were escorting the CP9 agents to Enies Lobby, and he was obviously too dumb to understand what was going on, so although he was clearly strong, in the sense that he even kills a Sea King with one attack, Zoro just defeats him and he is left on the seat. At the 17th arc now, we got Thriller Bark, and who do we have here? It's Absolum. He had the Clear fruit, which is obviously a good fruit in any context, but especially in Thriller Bark, a horror-themed arc where fear and psychological warfare are central themes, and none of the Straw Hats have observation haki. He could have been as much of a threat as Oars if he had just locked in. But nah, all he did was assault Nami in multiple ways, and by the way, he also assaulted Robin, and ultimately his existence just enrages Sanji, so he gets absolutely destroyed by him. Now heading into the Summit War saga, which means we got the Sabaody Archipelago arc next. This is a relatively short arc which introduces a number of major characters like Rayleigh, Shaki, and the Supernovas, not to mention Kizaru and Sentomaru as well. And you'd think there's not really a useless character considering how tight it is, but there is actually one, and his name is Disco. He's the manager of the human auction house in Grove 1. He works for Doflamingo, and he is a slaver who sells slaves of multiple races to the Celestial Dragons. And although he could have been a despicable minor antagonist who the audience wants to see punished by Luffy, that role went to Charlos. Meanwhile, Oda put Disco through a complete humiliation ritual where he was crashing out over the slaves, got easily knocked out by Rayleigh's haki, and even later when he called Doflamingo for help, he was just abandoned. Moving on, we have Amazon Lily, and this is tricky. I guess you could say Hancock sisters for this one, but they were useful for showing the relevance of the mark of the Celestial Dragon slaves, and also for the haki exposition. So I'm gonna have to give this one to Bakura the Panther. She is introduced as the executioner of the Kuja tribe and then released into the arena to kill Luffy, but Luffy literally just one-shots her. At number 20, we got Impel Down, which is arguably the most intense, fast-paced arc in One Piece. We have so many characters just doing all these different things. Still, if I were to name one relevant yet also major character as the most useless of this arc, it'll be the chief guard Sadi-chan. She is a woman who enjoys torturing prisoners, and she is the one who commands the awakened jailer beast. But ask yourselves, can you even recall one moment where she felt like an actual threat? She ultimately fights and easily gets defeated by Ivankov off screen. The next time we see her after that, she is found by Magellan all tied up. So when you look at how much of an absolute menace Magellan was, despite spending 10 hours on the toilet and despite the absolute chaos in Impel Down, and Hanabel who gets a big character moment against the pirates, it feels odd how Sadi-chan, who is right below them both in terms of authority, is such a non-threat. We have finally arrived at the Marineford arc, and who could possibly be the most useless character of this arc? Maybe John Giant or Lons, considering how this was the first time Giants get absolute fodder treatment. Obviously it's not going to be Squard. He was useful in the sense that his betrayal is the single most damaging action to the Whitebeard pirates in the entire war. So who? The answer is Gecko Moria. Even with all the corpses and shadows at his disposal, he is unable to do much. He gets instantly mogged by Jinbei and later gets humiliated by Doflamingo, who reveals that the orders for his purge came from someone higher than Sengoku. He is largely irrelevant in the context of the war despite being a warlord and a former saga antagonist. I guess you could say he is a shadow of his former self, even more so than he was at Thriller Bark. Now after this we have the time skip, and the next arc following the time skip is the return to Sabaody. But come on, we all know that the most useless characters of that arc are definitely the fake Straw Hat Pirates. They were just there to ruin the vibes. So let's just skip all of that and go straight to Fishman Island as our 22nd arc. And to be fair, this arc also has a lot of jobbers. The new Fishman Pirates are nothing special, but there's a character who has foreshadowed back in Arlong Park who really should have been special. We're talking about Hyozo, the best swordsman of Fishman Island. He was foreshadowed by Hachi all the way back in Arlong Park, and he was also the first real swordsman Zoro faced since Ryuma in Thriller Bark. But despite all the energy steroids he was on to enhance his stats, Zoro easily defeats him and even mogs him by calling him a frog from a tiny pond, even though he's an octopus. He is literally just all hype with no payoff. And next up we have Punk Hazard, and look, this arc has Tashigi, who disappointed everyone who thought she was going to be Zoro's rival. And here in this arc we also realize that yeah, Smoker is never becoming an admiral. But honestly, these two were still useful. The useless characters of this arc were more like Brown Beard. He antagonizes the Straw Hats only to be betrayed for literally nothing. He was nothing to Caesar, but he's still not the most useless character of this arc. That goes to the Yeti Cool brothers Rock and Scotch. They are actually a distinct group of giants, just like how the ancient giants are a distinct group of giants, but their contribution to the arc is next to zero. They ambush Sanji, Zoro, and Brook and assume their job is done, but the trio is completely fine. And when they are confronted by Luffy at the hideout, Frankie in Chopper's Monster Point knocks out Rock, while Law instantly bisects Scotch. Moving on to Dressrosa, what do we have here? If I think of all the characters here, I'm afraid the answer is going to be Rebecca. She is Oda's worst case of a damsel in a dress. The entire arc is just getting her saved. Even after Doflamingo is defeated, Luffy has to come and take her from the palace so that she can resume her relationship with her father. She competes in the Coliseum D block and wins by default only because Hakuba knocks everyone else out. She is saved by Luffy multiple times. She is saved by Sabo. She is saved by Kiros. She is saved by Robin. She is saved by Law when he switches her with Viola. She is a damsel in distress for almost the entire arc. And don't even get me started on that ridiculous outfit. Moving on to the 25th arc, we have Zoe. Yet another mini arc, but with a very obvious useless character. It's Jack, one of Kaido's all-star pirates, a pirate with a billion berry bounty. He had all the hype thanks to Kaido's introduction at the end of Dressrosa, and to be honest, Jack was moving like he was a top tier. He tried to attack the marine convoy to rescue Doflamingo, even though Sengoku was on board the same convoy. And later, he tried to actually kill Zunisha, but instead, Zunisha destroyed Jack and his entire fleet in one single swing. Now, Jack was indeed useful for building stakes considering what he did to Zoe and the Minx before the actual arc started, but as we know, by the time Luffy and the others arrive, the situation has already been resolved. At number 26, we have the Whole Cake Island arc. This arc had so many characters, many of whom can be considered useless, like Sanji's brothers, or Caesar Clown, even half of Big Mom's children, but there's one character whose uselessness in this arc cannot be excused. It's Charlotte Smoothie. Both Cracker and Katakuri were the actual main antagonists of this arc in the sense they had to be defeated by Luffy for things to progress. Yet Smoothie, who is one of the 3 Sweet Commanders and in fact even stronger than Cracker, did not even get one clear fight. Brook managed to copy the poneglyphs even though she was literally guarding the Room of Treasure. When she pursues the Thousand Sunny later, she does not land any significant hit on anyone, she does not capture anyone, and again, she does not even get a single extended fight. She is largely irrelevant to the plot. Ultimately, if Oda had made Pedal Spedal the 3rd Sweet Commander instead of her, absolutely nothing would be lost. After Whole Cake Island though, we have the Reverie, but almost everyone here serves a narrative purpose. But if I had to pick one person, I'll maybe choose Sabo's stepbrother Stelly. But he is a stereotypical character intended to contrast Sabo, and his uselessness is intentional. So let's just move into Wano, the longest arc in One Piece. And I'm going to blow your mind by asking you one simple question. Can you remember one thing Carrot did in this arc? Literally just name one thing. No, right? All she did was get traumatized by Pedal Spedal. Honestly, considering how bad Carrot did in this arc, you'd think a rabbit ruined one of Oda's manuscripts. Half the fandom wanted her to be a Straw Hat, and yet she does nothing in Wano, and the arc ends with her becoming the leader of the Minks so that she can fulfill Pedro's will. Whatever that means. I mean, come on, if her job is to fulfill Pedro's will, she should be on the Thousand Sunny. Alternatively, if you don't agree with Carrot as the most useless character of this arc, I have another one. It's Admiral Green Bull. Nothing has done more damage to the Admiral agenda than the panel of Green Bull getting down on his knees from one stroke of Shanks' Wi-Fi hockey. It's been over 100 chapters since then, and the Admiral fanbase still hasn't recovered. To be fair, it's obvious that Oda had better plans for Green Bull, but he decided against it for more Shanks glaze to promote Film Red. Although I guess Green Bull still helped revitalize Wano's polluted lands with his Forest Logia powers, which is technically more than what Carrot did, but since he's an admiral, let's measure his usefulness compared to other admirals. Aokiji was a complete nightmare to the Straw Hats at Long Ring Island. He immediately made it clear that there's nothing they can do. Kizaru fought the Supernovas at Sabaody, and if it weren't for Kuma, the Straw Hats were done. Akainu burnt half of Whitebeard's face, killed Ace, and gave Luffy a permanent scar. Fujitora did the right thing. Even at Marijoa, he had no problem bringing down meteors to help the slaves escape. Meanwhile, Green Bull only got to Ora Farm against the wounded Beast Pirates before getting stopped by Momo and the others, and then forced to exit the chat by Shanks. Garbage? No wonder he's the only admiral for whom we don't even use the Japanese name for. Now for the 29th arc is Egghead Island, and let's just give this one to Saint Shepherd Jupiter. Although the vice admirals were all pretty useless too, aside from Doll and maybe Doberman, Jupiter is literally one of the 5 elders. Him acting so clunky and non-threatening compared to the other Gorosei is just weird. He was acting so passively. For example, while Warkuri was an absolute tank who basically humbled Luffy, and Saturn was just all over the place, he was threatening the Straw Hats, looking for the Denden Mushi, and still had enough time left to be done in by Luffy and Bonnie. Mars went through the Labo phase, straight to Punk Records to look for the Denden Mushi, and then also fought Luffy and the others, although he did get sent flying Team Rocket style. Nasjuro on the other hand froze all the Pacifista and then clashed with both Sanji and Zoro, but Jupiter was just acting like a mindless predator. The only major thing he actually does is transport the Cypher Pole and Seraphim units. But I don't know, maybe those theories that Jupiter will eventually betray the Elders and Imu aren't completely baseless. But moving on to the final arc we have here at number 30 is the Elbaf arc. Of course, this arc is still ongoing, so who knows if this will change in the future, but for now, it is definitely Usopp. I mean, come on, this is supposed to be your arc, man, yet you couldn't even beat an overly inflated cat. And it's also your fault that Imu got rage baited to a point where he decided to personally show up. Lock in, bro, it's now or never. Just kidding. Usopp hasn't done all that bad when you binge read the arc. Of course, he needs to do way more if he wants to accomplish his dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea, but it's still ongoing, so who knows what'll happen next. And then there's Hajruden. The difference between Loki and Hajruden is so crazy I don't even know what to say. Loki is completely breaking the One Piece power scale. He is fighting a stronger version of Imu than the one who is at God Valley, and yet he has actually been able to hurt him. Meanwhile, Rocks, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom combined could not do a single thing to Imu in chapter 1163. And then there's Ragnar, whose ice is objectively better than Aokiji's considering how no one but Ragnar can break it. Hajruden, on the other hand, has done absolutely nothing you can actually recall. He has had a decent amount of screen time, but zero powerful moments, which is kind of sad because he wants to be the king of giants. But all we can do is hope for the better, otherwise the Nepal piece is just insane with Hajruden and Loki. And there you have it. We have talked about the most useless characters of every single One Piece arc, but what do you guys think? Do you agree with this or do you disagree with any of these picks? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you have any future ideas for videos you guys want to see on the channel, go ahead and comment them as well. But that's all I got for y'all today. Take it easy and I'll catch you guys in the next upload. Peace.